I came to Penn initially as a faculty wife, and this would have been in 1963. And there were no women at that point in the history department. There were very, very few women anywhere in arts and sciences. So the first issue was our invisibility. There were even departments then, such as the then American Studies, which in some ways I'm delighted to say faded from the scene, that didn't even allow women in their graduate programs. So the first issue was to get women hired. And this did not really occur until the women's movement. And it was really, I think, the women's movement which began in the late 1960s and then really blossomed in the 1970s. And it was largely also thanks to the efforts and the pressure that students, undergraduate and graduate students, pressed on the university that we actually succeeded. So I would say the lack of presence and certainly the non-existence of women's studies at that time were the two of the most notable factors. The third was sexual harassment, both of students and of women faculty. There was sexual harassment within the departments. There were scandalous cases of women faculty being forced to pose naked in classrooms by the chairs of their departments. So these would be, I would say, the three biggest issues that I think women's studies grew out of and was designed with the Women's Center to address. My research, which at that point was on New York, the development of poverty in urbanizing America in the 19th century, and I began to discover that there were women reformers, which we hadn't learned about when I was in graduate school. So I began to write about this for my dissertation, and my professor at that point, at the beginning of the chapter where I was dealing with this, said, you have to be wrong. You know, you're exaggerating. And by the end of the chapter, when he had read all my evidence, he said, "You've convinced me." That was the first feminist article I published, and I called it Beauty, the Beast, and the Militant Woman. And it won a prize that year for the best article in the American Quarterly magazine, which was the magazine edited by the American Studies Association, or American Studies program here at Penn, the program that would not allow women as graduate students. So there's marvelous little ironies that go along. Well, I directed the Women's Studies program 2 different times. As I said, I was part of the negotiating team that established the Women's Center. I was on the committee that selected some of the early directors. I think when we started, it meant finding one's own voice and establishing oneself as an independent, I want to use the technical term subject, but as an independent person who is not dependent on other people financially or, of course, we're all dependent on one another emotionally, but not somebody's creature. Very brilliant symbolic anthropologist Mary Douglas said, dirt is matter out of order. And I think that feminists are frequently viewed as dirt out of order, and that's exactly what we want to be. We are challenging the established and oppressive orders of the day and finding a new way of structuring order. Well, first to be militant, to think of all the problems that they're dealing with on campus, which I understand include a resurgence of sexual harassment. I would urge them, or sexual abuse, I would urge them to have an idea of what they want and really to find both emotional and intellectual fulfillment, and then to work like hell to get it, and not to be intimidated, And secondly, I would say they must work together in collaboration. This conference that we've had today, I think, has indicated that none of us did anything on our own. The Penn Women's Center is a lighthouse for women on campus of all colors and ethnicities and sexual orientations. It is a place where they can come together. They can work, they can plan, and they can dream. And it's a place where they will find mutual support.